And Erwin, are you our man tonight for walking us through?
It'll be Alejandra. Sure.
Okay. 1 second. My clock says it's 4:01, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would you poll the board, please, for attendance?
Yes, Chair. And before that, I would just like to announce that the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District Hospital Board Corporation meeting will start immediately following the conclusion of this meeting. And I will now go ahead and take roll. Gabriel Cox.
Here.
Nájera.
Here.
Núñez.
Here.
Pimentel.
Here.
And Friel. Director Friel, are you there?
He's on mute.
You're on mute, Chair.
John, can you hear us? I'll text him.
We have quorum. Everybody's in attendance.
Jasmine, if you'd like to step in and maybe run the meeting as vice chair.
There he is. Hi, John. Welcome back. We can't hear you. Can you please unmute?
I'm having difficulty. Maybe somebody else can pick up the agenda going forward. I seem to be going in and out of connection.
Perfect. Director Nájera, would you be willing to chair the meeting?
Yes, give me 1 second.
Gotcha. Great. I can help cue you as well.
Okay, if you could queue it up, I would appreciate it. I think we
Great.
need to move on to public comment, correct?
We're on item number 2, which is any considerations to the agenda, late additions to the agenda. I do want to just inform the board that there is an amendment in item number 6. It's the title of the subject, and we need want to change it to approve the 22 budget and add obviously the replacement to the pages to reflect the same. So it's just a change in title to item number 6 on the agenda.
Okay. Now we open it up to public comment.
Correct.
Alejandra?
Yes, let me read the message here. Now is the time for public comment. If you wish to comment, please find the hand icon on the bottom of your screen and click on the icon to raise your hand. I'll call you by name when it is your turn to speak. We ask that you please state your name at the beginning of your comment. Once you begin speaking, the timer will start. The countdown timer will display on screen. If you're calling in by phone, please dial *9 now to join the speaker queue. This will virtually raise your hand. I will identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself and begin to speak. At the end of your 2 minutes, your microphone will be muted automatically. Ahora es el tiempo que la Junta de Directores recibirá comentarios del público. Si gustaría dar su comentario en español, tenemos servicio de traducción disponible para asistir. Si desea comentar, busque el icono de la mano en el fondo de la pantalla y haga clic para levantar la mano. Esto lo colocará en la fila para hablar. Cuando sea su turno de hablar, le llamaré por su nombre y verá una ventana emergente en su pantalla preguntándole si quiere activar su micrófono. Por favor, acepte y comience a hablar. Si se ha unido a través del teléfono, por favor, marque *9 para levantar la mano y estar colocado en la fila para hablar. Cuando sea su turno, le llamaré por los últimos 4 dígitos de su número de teléfono. Por favor, marque *6 para activar su micrófono. Al final de sus 2 minutos, su micrófono será desactivado automáticamente.
Okay, is there anybody that's joining us?
Yes, Chair. Give me 1 second here. We do have one person wishing to speak. Luann Martin, when you're ready, please unmute your microphone and begin to speak.
Hello, my name is Luann Martin. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm a longtime nurse at Watsonville Hospital. I've been there for 23 years. I've been a nurse since 1995. I work in perinatal And first off, I want to thank you guys for your hard work in moving this hospital towards a model that I think in the future is probably the best way to go. And I've always felt that way. But having said that, this is in light, what I'd like to say today is in light of the most recent decisions that you've made with the management team in moving all of our staff to full-time positions. I, like many others of my colleagues, was a part-time nurse. However, on my off days, I would often come in and do extra things on our unit for patient safety and for nurse education. So I would run drills such as low volume, high risk things. I kind of equate it as like, if you remember that old game Perfection, where you'd have to put in all the pieces for a timer or it would pop up and scare you. And it, you know, and if you didn't do it just right, you wouldn't win the game. Well, we have so many things that we have to be able to put together that are complicated, adult Legos that don't go together easily, and we don't have time to do this outside of patient care if we're not given that time. It's going to be really difficult moving forward with everybody being full-time. Those nurses can't cover for nurses that need to come in and work on drill or education or you know, a patient safety standard that's different, or something complicated like that game that I talk about, but in real life that makes a huge difference at the bedside. So I just want to let you know that the management, their decisions to move away from this is going to really affect those of us like myself who do these types of projects that won't have allotted time going forward to do them, and what that might look like for patient safety, for nurse education. And I can guarantee you it's going to make a huge impact, and I'm a concerned nurse.
Thank you, Luann, for your input. We
Okay.
appreciate you coming. Alejandra, can you call our next guest, please?
Yes, so our next speaker is Roseanne Ferris. Roseanne, when you're ready, please unmute your microphone and begin to speak. Roseanne? It looks like she might be having some issue unmuting. She was the only other speaker with a hand up, so I don't know if you'd like to wait perhaps a few seconds to see if she's able to unmute. Roseanne, if you can hear us, please unmute your microphone and begin to speak when you're ready.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Hi, Roseanne. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name's Roseanne Ferris, and I'm a critical care nurse at Watsonville for 26 years. Thank you for choosing to be public servants, and thank you, nurses, for choosing to be patient advocates. I'm here today to share the early effects of what the decision to rebid RN positions has caused. And I want to just name some of the names in the departments. Labor and Delivery, Michelle Rodriguez, Opie Adamson, Lisa Lieberman, Amanda Waybright, Courtney Siemens, Angelica Guillen, Olivia Rodney, Carlene Niemanen, Kate Moreno, Beth Chavez, Valerie Panzich, and Emily Brown. Majority of these nurses that you lost as regular positions were full-time. You readily took the advice of upper management and consultants, but failed to seek the input of actual stakeholders, the nurses. It allowed you to look through a lens, but gave you an incomplete picture, as Luann shared with you. We will continue to bring the updated effects to the board as they come forward in the next weeks to come. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Roseanne, and thank you for being here.
That was it, Director Nahida. There's nobody else in the speaker queue at this time. Wait, I'm sorry, one more. Steve Barrett, when you're ready, please unmute your microphone and begin to speak.
Thank you. I do want to thank Steve Barrett. I'm a nurse, a registered nurse at Watsonville Hospital, working in the telemetry unit for 14 years. And I do want to thank the board for listening to us, excuse me, very patiently in our long meeting a few weeks ago. I really appreciated that I did feel like we were listened to, but I wonder if we were really heard. And it doesn't seem like our objections or opinions were maybe respected or taken seriously. My question that I have for the board is that, does the board have a plan to evaluate the effectiveness of the plan of making all the nurses, or the vast majority of the nurses and many other employees to work full-time positions? How are you going to measure the success of your stated goals of reducing the need for travelers and the amount of overtime paid? And, as well as measuring the negative effects of it and the amount of employees possibly lost and the cost of new employees having to be trained. So I would appreciate any response that I could get for what you might be doing to follow up on this plan and see if it's really working. Thank you very much. And I do appreciate the work of the board. I was very impressed by the amount that you guys have done in a short period of time to get this hospital ready for the transition. And I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We look forward to partnering and collaborating with all the staff moving forward. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
Yes, Carla Rankin, when you're ready, please unmute your microphone and begin to speak.
Thank you. My name is Carla Rankin. I'm a nurse in the emergency room currently. I've been employed there since March 2001. I wanted to update you on the post rebid for night positions. There are 9 nursing positions and 1 charge position. Currently, after the rebid, those 9 positions will be filled by 1 part-time nurse and 1 full-time nurse. The emergency room is a 12-bed, in addition to 4 beds in the hallway, which brings us to a 16-bed department, in addition to being responsible for patients that present to the waiting room. You can see that that is not a workable option, and endangers the county's health. I know that you have an understanding of what nursing means, but I need to bring it to a personal level. Imagine you were ill. Imagine you come to the emergency room. That nurse, or anywhere in a critical care setting, that nurse at your bedside is your link to your survival. She's responsible for updating the physician as far as your critical care. If the emergency room becomes filled with inpatients that are no longer able to go to the floor, that also impacts on the ability of the emergency room to function and care for people. If Watsonville is compromised, it then spills over to Dominican. Dominican can't fulfill, meet the needs of the community's urgent health needs, and then the county becomes compromised. So I ask you to reconsider. As an additional information, St. Louis has 43 positions in their emergency room, 20 of which are part-time. So you can see that a mix of full and part-time is a norm in staffing. Thank you.
Thank you for being here and sharing with us, Carla.
I'm just allowing a second to see, but no other hands are raised at this time. Director Nahida. You're on mute, Director Nahida.
Let's go ahead and close public comment. We're going to move on to action on the consent agenda items 10 through 11. Would somebody like to walk us through this?
Director Nahida, at this point, if the board has any questions on the items, we're happy to answer. Otherwise, you guys can propose a vote to adopt them.
Okay,
I'll move approval. These are essential items that have been reviewed at the Ad hoc Transition Committee. We strongly recommend them. They're critical to our success in actually owning and operating this hospital next month.
well, let me go
This
ahead
is-
and read,
Move approval.
let me go ahead and read those out, please, for the public to hear what we are talking about. Item number 10 is approval of support agreement between the Health District and Hospital Corporation. The recommended action is that we support the agreement between the district and nonprofit. And number 11 is the loan from the Santa Cruz County to fund letter of credit for hospital lease. And this approves the acceptance of $3 million loan from County of Santa Cruz to fund a letter of credit that is required to secure the hospital and district's lease obligations and authorize the secretary of the board to sign a loan agreement documenting the loan. Okay, Director Pimentel, do you want to comment?
No comment. I think they're well explained, and I appreciate the staff's effort on the staff report. I move the recommendations forward.
This is John. I'll second that motion.
Okay, Alejandra, can you take a vote?
Yes. Gabriel Cox,
Aye.
Nájera,
Aye.
Nunez,
Aye.
Pimentel.
Aye.
And Friel.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. And then we're going to move on to a report back of ad hoc subcommittees of the board. I think that we're going to pass on the fundraising one since we're having a formal update from Tiffany in this meeting. Would somebody like to provide any other updates of the committees, the subcommittees?
I'd say the ad hoc, thank you, Chair Naheda. The ad hoc transition committee has been a live organic organism now for a couple of weeks. As John mentioned earlier, we're being pulled up. We're doing a lot of execution now on contracts, agreements, setting up bank accounts. As I mentioned at the last board meeting, I think everything is moving away from red panic to yellow caution and green done. So we still have a few items to work on, but we're on path to own and operate this hospital in next week, 2 weeks.
Thank you, Director Pimentel. Any other comment? Question?
So Director Nájera, I just want to clarify, we don't have an official presentation today by the interim staff on the fundraising efforts. I just want to flag that for you.
Okay. Tony, would you mind giving an update?
Sure, I can. I was only in the meeting for the first half hour. Maybe you can clue me in as to what happened in the second half hour. But the first half hour, we went over just our work stream, the loose ends that we are the loose ends that we have to follow up with in terms of our fundraising goals. Obviously, we all got good news earlier this week of Kaiser coming forth with a $4.5 million pledge to bring us to within $1.6 million of our $67 million goal. And so that was the good news for this week. And as Director Pimentel said, we are right there. In 2 weeks, it'll be owned and operated by this body, and I can't wait for that time. And Director Nájera, anything else that you'd like to add on to that? I'd welcome that.
Thank you, Director Nunez. Yes, I mean, it's phenomenal the work that has been done in collaboration here in the community of Watsonville to raise this amount of money to save our hospital and allow us to operate and move forward together as a team under our healthcare district. We look forward to collaborating with everybody, with all of the staff. We look forward to engaging and supporting and providing forums and spaces where we can hear from our community and our stakeholders. And I just have never heard of another area like Watsonville to ever come together and raise this amount of funds for something that is so needed in our community, especially after the pandemic. And a huge, huge thank you to all of the staff at Watsonville Community, especially the nurses, the providers, the everyday staff that showed up throughout the pandemic to take care of our community members and who continue to take care of our community members. We are all a team looking forward to working together and creating a new space for all of us and for our community. So just many, many thanks to all the partners, the city of Watsonville, the county of Santa Cruz, all of the independent donors, just everybody. We are just in a space of immense gratitude. And it really is an incredible moment in our history. So I just want to thank everybody, and the work really is now just beginning, right? We've gotten to the finish line next week. We're going to cross it. It's our hospital. And now we get to start to really join together, collaborate, move forward, and do some amazing work for our community. So many thanks to everybody.
Director Nahara, I can just share some numbers if that would be helpful.
I thought that you might be able to do that, Tiffany. Thank you so much.
So as we've announced this week, and as you heard through the press, we did get a $4.5 million commitment from Kaiser just late last week, in addition to the $3 million that they have already contributed to this effort. So it brings our total amount of funds raised and pledged to $61,354,528. We're also anticipating over $4 million in additional gifts that we are aware are coming in, and some other revenues. So taken together against our total fundraising goal of $67,025,000, we have a gap of $1.6 million. And that's not a gap to acquire the hospital, but a gap to our full goal, which includes acquisition capital and also working capital as we effectuate a turnaround of the hospital and bring it under community ownership. We've had over 450 unique donors. So if anyone out there is listening and would like to help us close that gap, you can go to pvhdp.org, and there's a few different ways that you can donate.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Once again, that's just an amazing feat that we've collectively accomplished, and I'm so proud of Watsonville. I have such a big heart for Watsonville, and this just makes me so incredibly proud of the ability of us to be able to come together and work together. Hasn't always been easy. We have little difficult decisions that we're having to make, and we have a lot of work to move forward together, and so I'm really looking forward to that. Okay, let's move on to any other subcommittees would you like to report out? Would anybody else like to provide any other updates? If not, let's move on to our regular agenda item, number 6. Monica or somebody, could you all give me an update?
Thank you, Director
Thank you.
Nahara. Yeah, this agenda item for us is a recommended action. It's the approval of, as I was mentioning, the 2022 proposed budget for the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District, and really authorizes the staff to make the necessary adjustments within the approved appropriations. So with that, I want to pass this to Noel, who will, give you guys more detail to this item.
I think this one might be me and Cecilia.
Yes. Oh, apologies. Yeah.
And I also want to ask if we could, just for this item, elevate the attendee Edith Driscoll, who is the treasurer, just so she's available to answer any questions from the board. Okay, and I will, I don't have an exciting PowerPoint, but I will go ahead and just share screen. So what we have in front of you today, oops. Does everybody see a budget? Yes, okay.
Yes, thank you, Tiffany.
Is a request to approve a budget for the district for 2022. The budget provides the funding for our district, which includes the operations of the 1206B clinic. There's a few locations of that clinic at Watsonville Community Hospital's campus, as well as at 1820 Main Street. The clinic is staffed by Coastal Health Partners, and there's a related agreement with that group that's on approval on another portion of today's agenda. Coastal Health Partners currently operates its own independent practice that's managed by Watsonville Healthcare Management, which is a debtor in the bankruptcy of the hospital. So at the close, as we close the purchase of the hospital, the management arrangement will expire and the district will be taking this on. So this budget provides for the expenses that are associated with the operation of that clinic, as well as additional appropriations of $100,000 to support other operations and administration of the district. And the budget does balance. I do want to just add a thing of clarification, because I think people might be wondering what is deductions from revenues for the clinic. That's something that we typically have in hospital and clinic and healthcare budgets, which is deductions from their contractual deductions made with different insurance payers. So that is what is represented in that line. Are there any questions about this budget? And if so, I would defer to Cecilia or Edith. Otherwise, the recommended action is to approve the proposed budget for the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District and authorize staff to make necessary adjustments within those approved appropriations for the remainder of the
I might just
calendar year.
add one minor comment again about that contractual allowance. These are the existing insurance contracts with the group in our new structure, and I'm sure Noel may touch on this. We have to move those insurance contracts to the district, and when we do so, we will be looking for better rates.
This is John.
Go ahead, John.
No, this is John. I'd say I'd just like to move, we approve the budget as presented and authorize staff to do the necessary steps to complete it.
Thank you, John. Marcus, is your hand raised for the motion or for a question?
A question. Thank you,
Go ahead.
Chair. If staff can just, there's two columns and one's called actuals, but actuals. Oh, actually, you've already corrected that. Never mind. I recall you said you had an amendment on. I'm retracting my statement because what I'm looking on the screen now is different than the board packet.
Yeah.
I think you made that announcement.
The
at beginning, so-
actuals are just from the historic performance of this group
Yep.
when combined with our management services organization that was the debtors managers. So we're probably not going to have a significant change in performance relative to that until we make changes in the insurance contracting.
Yeah, I think Marcus's question was in the board packet, we made a typo. Honestly, that just was January to August of 2023 because we were thinking fiscal year 23, but we've corrected that in what's presented today, and we have added the correction, which will be posted on the website.
Are there any other questions?
Just for clarity, the action was at 22-23 budget. This is a calendar 2022 budget. So I imagine we still have some work to do to come back and develop the last 6 months of this budget for January through June of 2023. Just stating the obvious. But otherwise, no, I appreciate the staff's work, and I do motion to accept and approve the proposed budget as included in the revised board packet schedule.
Director Friel, do you want to provide that second?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused. I made a motion, but we're changing that motion.
Well, there was a question and some clarifications. So Marcus is making a motion based on the clarification. I'm just offering if you want a second.
That's fine. I will second that motion made by Marcus.
Thank you. Alejandra, do you want to take a vote?
I think we have to go out to the public.
Oh, thank you.
For public
Thank you,
comment.
Director Nunez. Public comment.
I see nobody at this time with a hand raised, Director Nahida.
Okay, then we'll take a vote.
Yes. Gabriel Cox,
Aye.
Nahida,
Aye.
Nunez,
Aye.
Pimentel,
Aye.
and Friel.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 7, and this is approval of hospital lease and acceptance of hospital assets. Can somebody please provide the background?
This has a few recommendations, as you can tell. One is adopt the resolution approving the hospital lease and the acceptance of the hospital assets from the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District Hospital Corporation. The second one is authorize the board secretary, Jasmine Nahera, to sign all documents associated with the transfer of the Watson Community Hospital to public ownership. Making sure I get the third one, which is authorize the director Nahera, upon the advice of the district administrative staff and legal counsel, to make miscellaneous changes to the documents to effectuate the will of the board to close the transaction as necessary. And for this one, I will pass it along to Noel.
Yes, yes. So I'm gonna put up my same little PowerPoint that I had before. Can everybody see that? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is the culmination of everything that people have been working on for the last many months. So very exciting. And in your packet are a lot of legal documents with a lot of tiny print. And so my goal today is to try to just make sense of those and bring an overall understanding of the transaction, so that you can ask any questions that you might have, or ultimately vote on approval. So if you'll remember, the structure that we had been proposing, and which we're now going to memorialize, is that the debtor who has the assets entered into a asset purchase agreement with the project, and that was done a while ago and as part of the bankruptcy. And that talks about how the overall acquisition of the hospital would look through the bankruptcy. So now that we have the district and the nonprofit created, the next step is to assign that APA, that asset purchase agreement, to the hospital nonprofit. So that will happen in the escrow at close. And so the hospital nonprofit will be signing that on one side, and the project will be signing that on the other side. And so that's one of the documents in your packet. And so that's gonna transfer all those hospital assets that are necessary to operate the hospital over from the project to the nonprofit. So equipment and leases and all that. So then the next step that happens right at the same time is that the hospital nonprofit now holds all those assets, and it's going to convey those to the district so that SB 418 is satisfied, because remember 418 said that the district was going to acquire the hospital, and the nonprofit is going to retain rights and some a reservation of rights or some actual ownership interest on some of those assets. For example, the license needs to be in the name of the nonprofit. The payer contracts, receivables, things like that are going to be retained in the name of the nonprofit, whereas the district is going to hold everything else so that it satisfies SB 418. So this agreement we titled a conveyance agreement, and that actually has both of the entities on either side. One is the hospital nonprofit and one is the district. And then the final agreement that is in your packet is this amendment of the underlying lease. So MPT is the lessor, and they have title to much of the property on which both the hospital sits and also the surrounding property that has other tenants and things like that in it. And so the district and the nonprofit are going to be co-tenants under that lease. So MPT will remain the lessor, and the district and the nonprofit hospital will be co-tenant lessees under that lease. And so that the general terms of the lease, it's a long commercial lease, which is pretty customary, but there's $250,000 a month is due in rent. And then starting on January 1st of 2026, that base rent is going to go up with a CPI increase. The lease expires on September 30th of 2034, but there are 3 options to extend that lease for successive 5-year periods after 2034. It has the typical obligations of insurance that a tenant would normally hold. And then there's also an option to purchase at the end of the extensions for a fair market value price that would need to be negotiated by the parties. So that's going to be around for a while. There's always the option to try to buy the lessor out if that's something that the parties want to do. But that's currently the lease that you'll be holding as the lessee, as the tenant. So some of those spaces, not the actual hospital space, not the actual 4 corners of the hospital, but some of the other space is going to be used by the 1206B clinics. So that's very actually convenient. You don't have to go out and get a lease for those for yourself. And then there's other space in there that's held by other tenants. So the district will get income, the parties will get income from those subleases and then be able to use that to pay the overall rent obligation on the lease. So that's what the transaction is going to look like. And the documents that are in your packet are those that are needed to make that happen.
Thank you, Noelle. All right, are there questions from the board?
Just a comment before we go to public. Well, no questions. I'll hold my comments until we come back from public comment.
So one other nuance, the agreements are pretty much final. There's a couple, the lawyers are talking back and forth on a couple little things, which is why we needed to get some authority to make little tweaks here and there. But in general, this is the structure and this is what it's going to look like.
Thank you. So it sounds like we should open it up to public comment.
Director Nahida, I'm looking, and at this time, I don't see anybody with their hand raised wishing to speak on this item.
Thank you, Alejandra. Okay, would anybody like to make a comment from the board or have a question from the board?
Just a kind of an obvious statement that it'll be nice to not have to deal with MPT. I appreciate that they've been very helpful. That's not a negative comment, but I think this hospital deserves to own its land and buildings that it sits on. So I look forward to the opportunity to exercise the right to acquire the hospital, and I appreciate staff negotiating and keeping that right available to us within the body of the agreement. So that's my comment. And we still have some work to do, and that foundation is going to get busy right out the gate.
Absolutely.
And I do appreciate MBT. They've made a significant reduction in their lease rates, and I do acknowledge that. They've been fair in this process.
Thank you. Any other board members, would you like to make a comment or do you have a question? No? Okay, then is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move staff recommendation on all 3 items.
Thank you, Director Nunez. Is there a second?
And I'll second that. This is John.
Okay, thank you.
Before we vote, I just realized I was going to ask a clarification to staff. There's only 1 signer in Jasmine. I presume that's going to be fine. Is there any risk to, or are we okay with that? I'm a little nervous. Yeah,
my understanding is I'm an additional signer, correct?
No.
So you're the only signer.
Oh,
Yeah, so we want to make sure, especially for those documents that are between the two entities, that they're not signed by the same person on both sides of the deal. So we tried to simplify that and have one director on one side and one on the other.
Thank
So
you.
just to clarify, Marcus, what we're saying is for the health district, Jasmine, and then for the health district hospital corp, your name is under that one.
And I'm just worried about uncontrollable events happening. And what if one of
You
us
guys
are-
can't go anywhere.
No.
It's not about going anywhere.
So do we know your home address? We might have to come hunt you
Oh,
down.
people know how to find me. I'm not worried about being available. That's it. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I think the motion's on the floor. Ready?
Sorry, is
Call
there
for
a
the
vote? Alejandra.
Yes. Gabriel Cox,
Aye.
Nájera,
Aye.
Nunez,
Aye.
Pimentel.
Aye.
And Friel.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Okay. I believe that we are at the final item. Am I right?
For item number 8, Chair.
Oh,
And this,
one more. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay,
This
item
is-
number 8, approve formation of a district clinic under Health and Safety Code Section 1206B and approve professional services agreement with Coastal Health Partners. A, approve business plan to form a district clinic under Health and Safety Code Section 1206B. B, authorize Board Secretary Jasmine Nájera to sign professional services agreement between the Bajada Valley Healthcare District and Coastal Health Partners. And C, authorize Director Nájera, upon the advice of district administrative staff and legal counsel and Watsonville Community Hospital executive staff, to make miscellaneous changes to the agreement and attachments to effectuate the will of the board to establish a district clinic under an agreement with Coastal Health Partners. All right, that was a mouthful. Go
yeah,
ahead.
we've discussed this topic before, Chair and Board. This is just basically for us to actually move forward with the recommendations that you've read out loud. I'll pass it to Noelle so she can get into the details of where we stand right now with this.
Sure. So two separate things that need to be done. One, the district needs to approve the formation of the 1206B clinics. And so unlike operating a hospital that has all the licensure requirements and all that, all that's needed is for you folks to vote on it and then it's done. So that's a real easy way to get these clinics up and running and give the district the opportunity to provide these necessary healthcare services in your community. So it's a really unique opportunity that you have as a district to be able to do this. So that's the first request. And then you need to find physicians to staff those clinics. And so the most obvious group of physicians was the Coastal Health Partners, because they currently were under an MSO structure with the debtor. And so an MSO structure is one in which the medical group still operates as an independent group, still owns their practice, and is just managed by another entity. And in this case, they were managed by one of the debtors. So the difference now is that these physicians are going to be providing services in the district's clinics. This is going to be a district-owned operation as opposed to a physician-owned operation. So part of that process is the district absorbing the overhead costs of running that clinic. So staffing, lease payments, equipment, all those sorts of things will be provided by the district, and Coastal Health Partners, the professional corporation, will provide the physicians, and the district will be obligated to pay Coastal for the services that the physicians provide, and the district will cover all the overhead expenses. So you saw in the budget kind of what that looks like in terms of operating the clinic. Cecilia is going to work her magic and get some good payer contracts to hopefully raise some revenues from what they were. And the district will do the collections for the revenues and all that. So that's the PSA that we're asking that the board approve, that provides for those professional services by the physicians. Any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who worked to create a creative arrangement that allowed us to keep the physicians in our area to serve our patients. And I'd like to suggest that we move forward with this with the understanding that there are expectations around the services that are provided in our 1206B clinic, including high quality care, safety for patients, evidence-based medical care, as well as access and productivity. And I'd also like to ask staff to coordinate with clinic staff to develop a plan for metrics and a plan to report out on accountability that can come back to us on a scheduled basis so that we can follow along. Thank you.
Yeah, so this will be something that always comes back to the district board. It's a district project, not a hospital project. So the district will always have oversight of this. And the really unique thing about the 1206B is that you have the freedom if there are additional providers that are needed. You have the freedom to start and work on those clinics too. So it's a very flexible vehicle to get the community the services that it needs.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions?
Yeah, just did a really quick question, Noel, or maybe Cecilia as well too. Did we do any outreach to the physicians that are going to be there at the 1206?
Oh yeah.
No, I've met with them. They're a terrific group, and they're very comfortable. They honestly, I view this as a good thing. They aren't terribly preoccupied with the mechanics of how these arrangements work. They just want to practice and see patients, and they appreciated all this fun legal detail, but they were reassured that it's been taken care of. That was their main takeaway.
That's great. I love to have people doing their jobs and not have to worry about overhead and that sort of stuff. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
All right, if there's nobody else, it looks like we'll take a motion.
Do you want to take public comment, Chair?
Thank you, Jason. Alejandra.
I see nobody at this time with their hand raised who wishes to speak, Chair.
Thank you, Alejandra. All right, is there a motion to approve item 8?
Yeah, I'll move staff recommendation on all items.
Thank you, Director Nunez. Is there a second?
I'll second. Marcus. I'm sorry, Katie.
Thank you, Director Pimentel. Alejandra, can you take a vote?
Yes.
Before the vote, can I ask whether the motion included Director Cox's additional direction?
Good question.
Or-
Thank you, Jason. Or does that get placed on our next agenda?
It did not, but I'm more than happy to make a friendly amendment to my motion and add that direction on top of that.
I accept that amendment.
Are we good, Jason?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we take a vote, Alejandra?
Yes. Gabriel Cox,
Aye.
Nájera,
Aye.
Nunez,
Aye.
Pimentel,
Aye.
and Friel.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item 9, which is board member and staff announcements and request to place items on a future agenda. Is there anything that anybody would like to add? Request?
I'd like to request that this board bring an item back on September 1st to appoint the district CEO.
So I'm sorry, Chair, can you repeat that again? I think I'm having internet issues. I think I heard that you want to come back and appoint the Watsonville Community Hospital CEO.
to appoint a CEO for this district, for this board.
Gotcha. Thank you. We'll note that. We'll follow up with you too for more details.
Yeah. Okay, so then that's the close of this meeting, correct? And we're going to move on and open up the Baja Valley Healthcare District Hospital Board of Directors meeting. Correct?
That is correct, Director Knight.
All right. Do we do a call to order? Or do we just keep it moving? All right,
Let's keep it
considerations of
moving.
late additions to the agenda. Bear with me, folks. Late additions to the agenda.
I'm sorry. We should do.
Yeah.
We need to do a
Okay.
call to order.
Roll call.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Gabriel Cox,
Here.
Nájera,
Here.
Nunez,
Here.
Pimentel,
Here.
and Frail.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you. Considerations of any late additions to the agenda?
Yes, Board, just wanted to note that we're requesting to delete the consent item 11. We weren't able to actually upload the relevant policies. We are hoping obviously to come back at the next meeting and have that ready for the board.
Okay, thank you. Shall we open it up to public comment if there's nothing else?
Right. Yes, Chair, I'll go ahead and read the public comment instructions.
Thank you.
Now is the time for public comment. If you wish to comment, please find the hand icon on the bottom of your screen and click on the icon to raise your hand. I'll call you by name when it is your turn to speak. We ask that you please state your name at the beginning of your comment. Once you begin speaking, the timer will start. The countdown timer will display on screen. If you're calling in by phone, please dial *9 now to join the speaker queue. This will virtually raise your hand. I will identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself and begin to speak. At the end of your 2 minutes, your microphone will be muted automatically. Ahora es el tiempo que la Junta de Directores recibirá comentarios del público. Si gustaría dar su comentario en español, tenemos servicio de traducción disponible para asistir. Si desea comentar, busque el icono de la mano en el fondo de la pantalla y haga clic para levantar la mano. Esto lo colocará en la fila para hablar. Cuando sea su turno de hablar, le llamaré por su nombre y verá una ventana emergente en la pantalla preguntándole si quiere activar su micrófono. Por favor, acepte y comience a hablar. Si se ha unido a través del teléfono, por favor, marque *9 para levantar la mano y estar colocado en la fila para hablar. Cuando sea su turno, le llamaré por los últimos 4 dígitos de su número de teléfono. Por favor, marque *6 para activar su micrófono. Al final de sus 2 minutos, su micrófono será desactivado automáticamente.
Thank you. Is there anybody who would like to make a public comment?
Not at this time, Chair. I don't see anyone with a hand raised.
Okay. So at this point, we'll move on to take action on the consent agenda items 9 through 14, with the exception of number 11 that is getting deleted. I'll go ahead and read those off. Bear with me.
It's not necessary to do that if you don't want to.
Okay,
Just to let you know.
let me just read the heading of each for those that are on the phone, so they just at least know what we're referring to. So number 9 is approve merchant processing applications for cashier and web for credit card processing services with Click Inc. Number 10, approve support agreement between the district and hospital. Number 12, approval and adoption of new retirement plans. And number 13, authorize renewal of consulting contracts. And number 14, authorize renegotiation of executory contracts. All right. So is there any background? Or do we
No,
just go
you would
ahead
just
and
call
move?
for a motion. You
Okay,
would just call
is
for a
there
motion at this point.
This is John. I'll make that motion that we include those items as listed with the exclusion of number 11.
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Thank you. Alejandra, can you take a vote? Sorry, public comment. Do we need to do public comment on the consent? No, right?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. Alejandra?
Gabriel Cox,
Aye.
Nájera,
Aye.
Nunez,
Aye.
Pimentel,
Aye.
and Friel.
Aye.
The motion carries.
All right, thank you all so much. Let's move on to our regular agenda. Number 5 is approval of hospital purchase, hospital lease, and conveyance of hospital assets. This is an action item. Can we get some background on this, please?
Yeah, this is very similar to the previous agenda item under the Health District Director. Nájera, I'll read it off. It's 3 recommendations, 3 action items. One is to adopt the resolution approving the hospital purchase, the hospital lease, and the convenience of the hospital assets. Also authorize the board treasurer, Marcus Pimentel, to sign all documents associated with the transfer of the Watsonville Community Hospital to public ownership. And authorize the director Pimentel as well, upon the advice of the nonprofit administrative staff and legal counsel, to make miscellaneous changes to the documents to effectuate the will of the board to close the transaction. So similar to this, I will go ahead and pass it now to Noel.
Sure, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen again for the benefit of what the minutes say, and also in case there's anybody who's joined us for this meeting. So there we go. So we've been talking over the months about what this acquisition was going to look like and the proposed structure. And what you now have in your board packet are the documents that are necessary to make that happen. So we have the hospital property that's currently owned by the debtor and the seller, and they previously entered into an asset purchase agreement with the project. That was done through the bankruptcy and was negotiated, I believe, before the district was even created. So now that the district has been created and the nonprofit have been created, we're going to put in place those things that are needed in order to get the district and the nonprofit, the hospital. So the first one of those is that the project needs to assign its right as the buyer under that asset purchase agreement to the hospital nonprofit. So it's purchasing all the assets that comprise Watsonville Community Hospital for approximately $32 million. The exact or closer figure is in your board packet. So once that assignment happens, then the hospital nonprofit becomes the buyer. And the assets that are included are anything needed to run a hospital, property, equipment, permits, insurance, AR, books and records, and also the real property on which the hospital sits. So at this very same time, or 1 nanosecond later, the hospital nonprofit will convey those assets to the district in order to satisfy SB 418. The conveyance agreement is a document that is between the two related entities, and it is meant to satisfy both the district's ownership of the hospital and also the nonprofit's reservation of rights and ownership in those assets that are necessary to allow it to operate the hospital. So for example, payer contracts, the license, the Medicare number, things like that that are needed to sit and reside with the nonprofit in order to allow it to run the hospital. And then at the same time, there's an amendment to the MPT lease, which transfers the lessee over to the district and the nonprofit as co-lessees under that. So they'll both be obligated on that lease. The general terms of the lease are base rent of $250,000 a month through December 31st of 2025. Then starting in 2026, there's going to be an increase based on a CPI index. The lease term expires September 30th, 2034, but there is an option three options to extend that for 5-year periods each beyond that 2034 date. The tenant has the normal and customary obligations of a tenant under a commercial lease, real property taxes, maintenance of insurance. There's some reserve payments that are dependent on the number of beds in the hospital. They have to maintain things like sidewalks and building exterior. And there's a potential for an option to purchase after the lease expires for a fair market value amount that's been negotiated between the parties. So that document is also in your packet. It's the amendment to the underlying lease. And as a result of that, there will also be what's called a co-tenancy agreement between the nonprofit and the district for the space, and to decide among those two entities who's responsible for what. For example, the nonprofit's going to be responsible for paying the rent. And there'll be other responsibilities that are set forth in more detail in that co-tenancy agreement. So you'll probably see that in the next couple weeks. So that is a summary of the transaction that everybody's been working towards. I'm happy to answer any questions, although given that this is the second time you've heard it, you probably don't have any questions.
No, this is John, just a quick one, and I apologize for throwing it in. You mentioned we'd have to assume the property tax. Are we going to be exempt from paying property tax as a district ownership?
You could be. So that's one of the things that we built into the amendment to work on that. And if that is possible, that we then get that benefit. I think Allison might be able to, she's been doing the heavy lifting on the amendment. Is that in there? Did the landlord agree to that?
Yeah, there's not many amendments that we made to the lease, but that is one of them that we built in, that the landlord has agreed to cooperate with us for any applications for exemption for tax. And it would be at our cost, but that's typical in a lease situation. So we proposed that language, and they easily accepted it. So we're happy about that, and we built in those protections and hopefully built in that savings mechanic for you guys.
It's not for certain, if I understand correctly, and you would think it was, but recall we don't own the property, so often the tax status for property tax is based on who owns the property, but there may be a way to do it. So I'm glad we have that in there, but that's the explanation for why it's not certain.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the board have any comment? If not, I think we open it up to public comment at this point.
I'm looking, Chair. I see nobody. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, there is one, Louise Pierce. If we could just give a moment for the timer to appear on screen. And Louise, when you're ready, please unmute your microphone and begin to speak.
Hi, my name is Louise Pierce. I've spoken before. I didn't have a chance to speak at the public comment at the beginning here, and I'm really invested in the hospital going forward and being a community hospital. But I want to reiterate and bring a voice to the staff at the hospital who are in distress at this time over the forced changes to our working conditions. The morale is awful. We're concerned about the loss of our coworkers across departments, and we're really suffering on the floor of the hospital at the moment. And I wanted you to know that that's how it feels on the inside right now, and we feel at a loss and we feel unheard. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing, Louise. We appreciate your comments, and we look forward to working and partnering with the nursing staff.
That was the only hand that was up. Chair Nahida, nobody else is wishing to speak at this moment.
Okay. Then is there a motion to approve the recommendation of the hospital purchase, hospital lease, and conveyance of hospital assets?
I'll motion approval of the 3 recommendations from the board that adds more work to me.
Thank you, Director Pimentel. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you, Director Nunez. Alejandra, can you take a vote?
Yes. Gabriel Cox,
Aye.
Nájera,
Aye.
Nunez,
Aye.
Pimentel,
Aye.
and Frio.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Alejandra. Now we're moving on to item 6, and this is the transition update for educational purposes.
Yeah, board, I just really want to, one, thank everyone for all of their work. I mean, I think as you can tell from some of the attachments and the documents, there really is over almost 200-300 activities that we're tracking through this transition. And there's so much last minute items that need to take place that are really critical for this to be a successful transition. And so Cecilia, I just want to recognize her. She's done a fantastic job dealing with so many things, but also giving you guys now an update on where we stand with some of the more urgent items. So with that, Cecilia, definitely pass it to you.
Thank you, Monica. That was very nice. There's been a lot of hard work by a lot of people. So I share that thanks with a big team. Yeah, okay, good. We have a presentation. Okay, you recognize my little colorful format here. I have 6 things I'm going to update you on tonight. It is the insurance contract negotiations, a little bit on HR, and we are fortunate to have Allison, who's the Chief HR Officer of the hospital, working on behalf of the buyer, who's available for questions there. My update on licensure, when this presentation went to print, said one thing, and it is now incorrect because it's changed, but I'll give you that. And then I'm going to talk to you about some important executory contracts. I'm going to talk to you about what's called the GPO, a group purchasing organization, and what the team is working on there for savings. And I'm going to show you what a closing cash flow looks like in terms of how the money is going to end up getting spent next, well, in the days leading up, quite frankly, to next Wednesday. Okay, let's go. Insurance contract negotiations, with the hospital actually has a fair number of payers. If you recall, we chose only to negotiate with about the top 9 of them because it just really isn't worth it for very small volume payers. We have spent tons of time this week over figuring out how it's really, I don't want you to hear all this, but having to do with how claims are processed and whether or not the insurance companies, even the ones that we do have relative agreement with, can update the credentialing that's on file in their claim system. So we will intentionally delay implementation of selected contracts. It's better than asking the hospital to reprocess claims, quite frankly. We had incorporated some delay in the hospital's cash flow, so it's fine. We did Central Coast Alliance. The 2 biggest ones that we really care about are Kaiser and the Central Coast Alliance. The Central Coast Alliance had provided a quote unquote best and final proposal today. I said the analysis is not complete. After I sent this presentation, I learned that the analysis seems to be complete and the rates are not in line with what we had hoped for. So we have potentially the option of also delaying implementation of any contract there and relying on the old contract while we have further discussions. And that is also what we're recommending with Kaiser Permanente, because we are so far off on rates with Kaiser that it would present a significant risk to the hospital if we cannot break that impasse. So we are recommending that we give ourselves a little more time, and without boring you with the details, there is a mechanism for doing that works. Just leave it on that. There are a lot of payers that are actually pretty on track. Blue Shield is the only one that has been super slow to the start, and they contributed $1 million to the acquisition of the hospital, but this is a different team. So happy that we have a mechanism for getting a little more time with them as well. Any questions on the insurance contracts? Super, super important that you know that the business plan that we presented to you was predicated on increased rates, particularly with Central Coast Alliance and Kaiser because of the size of those payers. And so this is not an unimportant thing. This is, I know there's a lot of work, Monica and others behind the scenes to kind of figure out how to break this impasse.
Not a question, but more of a comment and a recognition, Cecilia, of you and the entire team that's been working on this. I know Sheriff Riel has also been involved quite a bit. You're right, this is significant, this is critical. And I think as a reminder to the board, when we looked at these models early on, we were asking to increase to the midpoint of contracts, nothing more, even though we think we should. So it's really unfortunate that we're not here. The gaps are significant and do threaten our ability to have a long-term sustainable hospital. These are very significant and very critical. So I just appreciate all staff's work, and I support the recommendation to give us a little bit more time, because I think it's essential that we keep pushing. So thank you.
Okay, we'll move forward to the next item. And again, I think it's HR. So we are very lucky to have Allison here with us. Is that, oh, there we are. This actually should be Allison's slide. So if you have questions, I know she's here. So as you know, we made offers of employment to all existing employees. That is 639 employees. They were required to accept their offers by last Friday. And we have 611 employees who have accepted offers of employment. It is actually possible that we could lose more employees because the offer, if for many employees, if they thought about employees that had large amounts of PTO, it would not have been in their interest not to sign an offer letter because if they quit after implementation of the new positions, or just before the implementation of new positions in October, they would get a PTO payout. So I don't think this is over. The team has done just a terrific job rolling over benefits. I really hope this will be seamless. It looks like it will be really terrific. Interesting situation with ADP. Recall ADP processes payroll for the hospital employees or for the hospital to their employees, as well as actually for Coastal Health Partners. You know, they have been working for weeks to shift that timekeeping and payroll system over to you as the new owner. They actually have a deadline of tomorrow, which is not our closing date, that they will start implementing as of, I guess, on Monday. I really think it's Monday. I think they say tomorrow, but I don't think they're doing it over the weekend. I didn't put it in writing because I'm pretty sure it's true, though, that I was informed by leadership at the hospital who oversees payroll and ADP that, in fact, there is a way to stop it. It would be messy, but that is my update on HR. But if you have questions, again, Allison is here, which is really, really terrific. And she's working so hard. I feel bad. She joined shortly before the whole offer letter process started, and she is a labor attorney by background, known to many of you, and she just immediately had to start working around the clock, and hopefully her life gets better soon.
Cecilia, this is John. A quick question. You say that 611 employees have accepted the offers of employment, which is great, but we continue to get emails and people call into our meetings telling us how bad it is and how many folks are going to leave. Is that posturing again, or are we really at risk of losing 20 or 30 people, or what is your take on that?
You know, I will ask Allison to comment on this. Recall too that, and what I would also ask her to comment on is whether or not the 611 employees that accepted includes or excludes those who switched over to per diem positions. But I'm going to ask Allison to answer the rest of that question.
Sure. So, you know, being so new here and kind of jumping right into this on the offer letter process, you know, I don't really have my finger on the pulse, so I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question. I do think there are some employees that are letting us know that they will likely resign soon, but it is a handful that we've heard from so far in that camp. So we are right now working towards contacting anyone that was full-time or part-time wanting to go per diem. And I don't have the exact number for you. We got all of the information and offer letters, and we had to kind of put them in an Excel spreadsheet to send them to the payroll to spin them. But we are right now actively sending out termination packets to all of our employees as required by law, and then onboarding all of our employees with their I-9s and making sure their retirements and their benefits are set up. So there's so many pieces moving right now. I don't want to give you wrong numbers because we haven't really done a full QC of who's gone per diem to full time. But we will have that soon. So I'll have more information on that. Unfortunately, I don't have that much information.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate your answer, and having 611 employees accept the offer is admirable. And I think you, short timer that you are, and your staff, as well as the support you got from senior leadership, is what made that happen. So thank you very much. We'll just have to see what happens.
We will,
after we
yes.
close. Yeah, thank you, Allison.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll go on to the next item. Okay, yeah, let's go. This is the slide that I have to delete. But it's good news. It's good news. So I had this, this acute care license survey was still going on. We hadn't heard about the temporary pharmacy permit, and just about a half an hour before the meeting started, we were given notice that we were awarded an acute care license this afternoon. And we were notified by the Board of Pharmacy that pending just receipt of the closing documentation, that we were awarded a temporary pharmacy license, both retail and hospital. So that was a major hurdle to closing, because you can't operate without those licenses. And now we are done with that. And some follow-up. I told you, I think at the last meeting, that for Medicare, we now understand that they don't actually process the change until after you've closed. So that is not anything to be concerned about. So great news, just wonderful news. I want to recognize, we actually had some in-kind, very significant in-kind support from the compliance department at Salud Pariente. They, as well as leadership from Pillsbury, our law firm on this matter, this in-kind support, they did all of this. It's a pretty extensive process, and that time was donated to us by the compliance department of Salud.
Cecilia, this is John, not a question, but just a congratulatory comment to everybody getting an acute care license, going through the survey as we did the last couple of days, getting Medicare and Medi-Cal to agree to the hospital's continuation is huge with a big H. And you never know where the state is on their timetable, but a lot of people got behind this and made it happen. And to some extent, I guess we owe a thank you to the state for acting so quickly. But, you know, having been involved with some of these things over my career, you stay awake at night wondering what the state's going to do and not do when it comes to your license. So congratulations for getting this done as quickly as it did get done. Thank you.
I don't know if other people are feeling this way as we get closer to close and barriers keep getting removed, but I just think about the past year and how many barriers just one by one have been removed, paving the way. And this is just, it keeps happening every day. It's like, oh, barrier removed. This is a big one.
I'd like to also, if I could, compliment the folks at Salud and the compliance department, because they had to jump over hoops to satisfy all of the state's requirements that something be written versus printed versus typed versus computer, and all those things had to be re-signed, and they just
and you were signing them.
I was signing it, but you know, it just brought back days of old. Like, oh my God, that state, they're still at it. You think they'd get more efficient, but those folks did a great job. So
they sure did.
Very fortunate we have their services available to us. And Marcus, I know you're on the board, so please feel free to carry that remark onto them. And I've been thanking them profusely myself. So Good job, all.
And just for clarity, I'm a former board member, but I do agree with that. And they're quite committed to this community and have stepped up in a lot of ways that people will never know. But they're key to much of the success of this project, like so many other key partners. But thank you for those comments, and I'll be sure to share with my former colleagues.
All right, next item. Oh, I'm sorry about this. I do need to talk to you about this though, because one of the promises we made about this horrendous number of executory contracts that I would bring to your attention, contracts of significance and contracts where we need to pay cure. And I'll show you the overall budget for this, but this list has grown significantly. I have been told now by the bankruptcy folks that this always happens, because that you think something's going to happen, you think something, you're having discussions, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, the cure amounts do grow. Believe I already told you about our agreement with MedHost. This is the EMR company that has partnered with us to implement. And so we wanted to assure them very early on. The next one requires an update for you. I think I updated you. This relates to the cath lab. So the Phillips Medical Capital is actually the financing company for the cath lab. They're not they don't actually deliver the equipment, they finance. And the executory contract was with Phillips Medical Capital. They were going to finance both the cath lab as well as the construction. Collin Construction is a construction company. And we've had a very difficult time with Phillips Medical Capital. They did not want to do future business with the hospital. And so in order to take possession of the cath lab, the advice was to force performance under the Phillips Medical Capital contract by assuming it, which is our right in bankruptcy. However, there was a contractor's lien on the property from the construction company. And so we, in order to close, this is literally in order to close, we have to pay off the lien. And that is what that amount is right there. The good news is that will be deducted from the financing amount. So we would have been paying this over time. Make no mistake about it. We would have been paying it. And now that you will have paid it off because it's all one lump sum. Similarly, I've told you many times about this company, Heroic, that they provide some very, very important services to the hospital. We had ongoing discussions. The decision or recommendation at close is to assume their contract, because if we do not assume their existing contract, all kinds of bad things could happen if they pulled the plug on the services they're providing. They operate our data centers. They control access to email accounts, something that you'll have to look at going forward. But that is a very significant cure. It relates to a promissory note that was embedded in their agreement. This was a promissory note for failure to pay that was in their contract. The next one is an interesting one. I hope you agree with the business judgment here. I sure do. There was Western Alliance Equipment Company finances a whole bunch of equipment at the hospital. So they were making payments on all kinds of equipment there. And the payments are $35,000 a month. At the point where bankruptcy was filed, this vendor was owed $174,000. So to continue the financing of our equipment, we would have needed to pay the $174,000. In talking to this company, they indicated to us that if we pay $327,750, we're done. And you just, it's very simple math. It's really simple math. You were way better off buying them out than continuing to pay $35,000 a month for many, many or more years. So that is our recommendation. We have a couple of physicians that it was certainly the intention, particularly individual physicians, to bring physicians current prior to close. We missed a couple bills, so you see a couple of those in here. There are a couple of vendors that had relatively low cure mounts, deliver important technology to the hospital, and we couldn't reach them, just literally couldn't reach them. I mean, it's just for $4,000 or whatever, it's just, it's not worth it's not worth not closing over. So this is what you have to do. Similarly with Dell computers, there's a discussion there. The striker cure is unsettled. They're going to make us an offer tomorrow. I don't know what it is. I put a big number in there because I worry it's going to be a big number. There's 18 striker agreements. Some of it is for stuff that there's substitute vendors for, but some of it there is not. And one piece of equipment in particular that Matco has told me that it alone has a $500,000 outstanding balance. But Matco tells me if we don't have it, it is a big clinical care problem. So that is a holding spot. Sterling Technologies, small cure, they do our employment verification. We've needed them a lot the last month, so we just moved on from that. Cardinal, I'm going to say, I'm just guessing, as I've seen this list, might be 30 some odd contracts with Cardinal. They do business with different, they do Cardinal 110, Cardinal 220. I mean, they put numbers next to their company name and do separate contracts. There is one contract in particular. I don't understand why this one is so different, but they provide nuclear medicine compliance technology that we need to pay the balance on that one. And Beckman Coulter, I'm gonna be honest, they are an equipment vendor, and I swear I can't remember. I'm having trouble remembering. Same situation. They've been uncooperative. Can't stop them from closing. And then I learned a new word today. I learned that in addition to cures, there's things called 503B9 claims, which are not cures. They're called administrative claims that you have to pay. I should have known that earlier and did not. So we originally had a $2.6 million budget for cure. So rest assured we are under our budget, but boy, it's hard seeing these things pile on at the end. The budget right now is sitting at 1.783, which again is less than what we feared, but quite. Does anybody have any question about these companies? And I know it looks like a lot to you, but think about it in the broader context of getting this done. And I'm pretty sure that when we started, there was $14 million of outstanding debt to this list of vendors that we've been working through. So I think that of the 14 million to have it right now at about 1.8 is not too bad. There's a whole lot of vendors walking away from a lot of debt.
Cecilia, this is John. Just a quick comment. The Beckman Colt at the bottom, the next to last.
Do you know who they are?
Yeah, they're laboratory equipment.
Oh, that's right.
They're important to it. But the question is Western Alliance equipment. I
Mhm.
agree with buying them out. It means then we become the owner of that equipment. Do we know offhand what the age is and what future life is available on some of that equipment? Has that been?
We can
analyzed?
certainly provide that to you. Because it is not a single item, because this is a multitude of equipment. I
Right.
have to get you a list, and I'm happy to get that from the hospital.
Yeah, I don't think it should hold up. I just think we need
Yeah.
to be aware that if we're buying something that's 20 years old and because there's still payments due on it, we need to be careful that we don't let that thing fall apart under our nose because the price just gets higher and higher. But anyway, just a thought. We can look at it once we have operational responsibilities.
Yep, I'll make a note of it, John. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any more questions about this? And you're going to see something even more fun in a minute. Yeah.
Just appreciation and acknowledgement of also Matco. Calling out specifically on this. He's amazing, incredible.
He is working so hard.
He's the hospital's chief operating officer, and I've just been really impressed with his dedication at all levels. So
He's amazing. He's just amazing. All right, next slide. We're almost done. I'm going to go through this really quickly. It was FTI that prepared a couple slides on this, and they probably provided a little more than you wanted to know. But I did want to update you because this is kind of a major discussion that's going on right now. They use a group purchasing organization. This basically allows repricing from all kinds of vendors at a discount. And they use a company called HPG. we are taking assignment, and HPG's already agreed to this. We're taking assignment of the existing contract, but they gave us a 90-day out. So that anytime we can terminate without cause with 90 days notice. We shopped this. So there are at least two, I'm sure there's probably more, but there's at least two big GPOs out there. One's called Premier, this other one is called Vizient, and we got quotes from both of them. And the pricing as it stands right now, and again, this isn't final, it would come back and so we are sticking with HPG until we finalize any decision. But the Vizient is a company that was brought to us through the Kaiser Permanente relationship, and it looks like the savings with Vizient would be very, very substantial. I think that with this, we had a target, I can't remember, I think it was only $700,000 for supply savings, because we will eventually have a tax exemption that saves whatever that is, 8-9%. In addition to this, our savings looks like it will come in well over $1 million between these two things. Anyway, they also have some other really fun tool, if you like this thing, about just how to procure and making that more efficient. Katie, I want to think that either you or a speaker brought that up about just a more efficient procurement process, and I think they could offer that. So next slide. There's some information in this deck, which obviously is available to you, just comparing the proposal that they've made to us with today's contract that we are assuming with HPG. And so I think this will come back to you, but it's a very interesting opportunity. Are there any questions about the GPO? Okay, next slide. This is the last slide. There's two slides about closing. Just make you aware of the money that's going to go out the door pretty quick. The escrow itself is not, we have arranged it so the escrow will not handle all those cure payments. They will be paid outside of escrow. So this actually, the payments that go in and out at closing are pretty straightforward. The amounts that will be repaid to Medical Properties Trust, as you know, they provided what's called the debtor in possession financing to keep the hospital open for the first period of time after bankruptcy. That balance is $22.8 million. The hospital has been paying the interest on that debt throughout the post-petition time frame, but they haven't made the August interest payment, so that will be wrapped into closing. And as well as just for efficiency, we're going to make our first month's rent and insurance payment through the escrow vehicle. You recall the actual purchase price for the hospital is only $9 million. There is a $4.5 million deposit that is already sitting with the escrow. And so the net on the purchase price is $4.5 million. So the amount due at closing through escrow is $27.8 million. Next slide. I have to minimize all of your pictures or I can't even see this. Where's the money coming from? This kind of shows you where we're at money-wise. So to fund the escrow, the county will deposit the $25 million that is being advanced based on the appropriation from the state of California. And I'm sure if Carlos were here, he would want to thank all of the 5 cities who actually backed the $25 million with loans themselves to make sure that this money was available to the county at escrow. Incredibly generous. And so the $25 million will be advanced in escrow.
Can I make a clarification, Cecilia? Sorry.
Yes, sure.
It's 3 cities, the city of Capitola, the city of Watsonville, and the city of Santa Cruz.
Oh, that's right.
Of $5 million each in bridge loan, and also Salud para la Gente, another $5 million community foundation.
I am so glad you made that correction. That was a real slip on my part, because the loans from the community foundation slewed, and these cities, it really is incredibly generous to do that. Just one more thing, one more little blockade that got solved, and only through the partnership that these communities have for this hospital. So the amount that actually needs to be deposited from the project itself at escrow is 2.8 million, whatever, 52 gets pretty exact, and that shows you how we fund that 27.8 in total. So that's the escrow. So the project will also pay all the cures, which would be the 1.783. And once the project does that, it would have 5.5 million currently in the bank. We will need to release $2.5 million to the hospital in advance of closing to pay our own September 1 bills. Again, there's just too many moving parts here to do it any other way. We're going to ask the seller to pay our September 1 bills so that they don't get caught up in the signing problem. There are remaining funds, and I want to recognize, I wish I could recognize the person, but I can't because I don't know who it is. A $250,000 donation came into the community foundation this morning anonymously. The balance that was left at the community foundation would have been down to about $16,000 until the $250,000 came in today. So really exciting. Again, one more great thing that happened in the last few days, lest we think it's all been hard. There is also remaining funds at the trust. That balance grows every day. I'm not exactly, this is what it was last time I checked. We do have an additional $300,000 coming from the Alliance. Recall they gave us a $3 million grant. They held out $300,000 for closing. And so that once you delete the 2.5 and then add back in the other money, there's about $3.7 million. Salud has a debt. Again, Salud's been very generous here. So we had cash flow problems during the middle of this process. It was earlier in the year. Salud, there is a loan to Salud in the amount of $2 million, and then there's accrued interest. So that must be paid off at close. The project must also, and we don't know exactly what the amount is, they cannot just transfer everything they have at that point to the hospital because they're going to get boatloads of bills for all the consultants from October, particularly, I have to say, on the legal side, but some consultants too that are fairly expensive. This last period of time, people have been, I kid you not, people have been working anywhere from 16, 18 hours a day. And so I expect that the bills will be sizable. We recommend they retain at least 1.25 million. And then, you know, if it's less, it's less, but everybody has to be paid. So that would leave $513,000 to be transferred. Now, that's not all we have, don't worry. So what'll happen is there is a 2.5 million in excess cash today, could increase. That number has improved in recent days. Kaiser is advancing claims in the amount of $3 million. So you keep adding up the Kaiser contribution. So I recognize we're in a difficult place in this contract, but they gave us 7.5 million in acquisition capital. And this is in addition to that they are putting cash on the balance sheet on September 2nd, actually. So during that first month, there'll be sufficient working capital for the hospital in the total amount of over $6 million. And, you know, we had a target of having 10 million on the balance sheet. There's an additional, there are funds that have been contributed to this effort that will be released early through this relationship with the Packard Foundation. And that is an additional $6.3 million that will be paid to the hospital in October. It's just, they can't do it by closing because their board doesn't meet by then. Recall what this is that this is for organizations and individuals who made future pledges that said, okay, next year I'm going to give you 50,000 or whatever, that the Packard Foundation is advancing. I need to tell you, they haven't approved this at their board, but they are expected to advance those funds to us through what they call a community investment loan. And the interest that will accrue on the community investment loan is at the rate of 0.5%. And the balance of the loan goes down as the pledges are fulfilled. So in total, we will have well over $12 million of working capital relative to our initial goal of 10. Any questions? Okay.
No questions, just a big wow.
It is a wow, isn't it? You just kind of go, we did it. And we're not done. And, you know, the generosity of this community is just very, very clear.
But we also know in our cash modeling for operations that we're going to have some difficult months coming
That's right.
ahead.
Very difficult.
And for a hospital our size, that's not sufficient operating reserve, let alone capital reserves. So,
Yeah. Both things are true. We raised a lot of money. It
Absolutely.
ideally would have been, you know, this is not really the kind of working capital that a healthy hospital would have.
But I didn't mean to
No,
take away
be a
from
Debbie
the
Downer.
celebration.
No, it's really important to keep remembering that because, again, if we don't get the managed care revenue, if we don't, you know, if certain things don't happen, you're going to continue to have negative cash flow, and you could burn through this. It's just that simple. But so a yay and a worry at the same time. All right, I think that was my last slide.
That highlights.
Sorry so long, but there is a lot going on.
I think that highlights the need for us to highlight that this is continued work, that we have staff that we need to hire for fundraising efforts. And so this is just the beginning of a long, long partnership. So unless there's any other questions or comments, Cecilia, thank you so much for the presentation. I think the next item is number 7, board member and staff announcements and request to place items on future agendas. Does anybody have anything? Okay, so then
I'll just, before we close, I just wanted to comment on all the people who have been coming to our meetings since the very beginning. You know, we're still a conceptual board. You know, we're almost there, and we go into live operations about 2 weeks. So I thank everybody who's been coming, participating, giving us their feedback. I think I also want to acknowledge in this last couple of weeks it's been tough, and I do think the staff who are from our hospital, who are from our community, who are expressing their concerns, we're all stressed. This is a very stressful time. As I've said before, I'm thankful. You know, the flip side of stress is we're going to end up with a community-controlled hospital, and that's amazing, and it's phenomenal. But I just want to acknowledge that this has been tough, and I think, you know, to those who are participating, those who are sending your emails, we are hearing you. But there's just a lot we're trying to do to make this salvageable and make this a sustainable community hospital. And we look forward to, as Jasmine, as you've been saying this whole meeting, how we can partner towards the future together. And I think that is something we're going to be committed to. So I just wanted to comment on that. And I didn't mean to down your mood, Cecilia. You know, John's exactly right. It's phenomenal. And Jasmine, you've said this before. It's phenomenal how much this community's come together. This is an historical event that I'm not surprised this community's always overcome incredible obstacles, whether it's an earthquake that not a lot of people supported our community. We did a lot of it ourselves. It's a resilient community, and this is just another sign of that. So thank you to everybody who's on this call. Thank you to everybody who's in attendance. Thank you to everybody who isn't here that's been helping out so much. It's been phenomenal.
Thank you, Marcus. All right, with that, we're going to go into closed session. Do I need to do anything else, Jason?
No, there are no reportable actions out of tonight's closed session. We'll just go ahead and allow the clerk a moment to ensure that we have a closed room, and then we'll begin.
Okay. Once again, thank you everybody for joining us tonight.